Hi, I'm Katla, and welcome to my second devlog for my game idea. Last time, I promised that I would tell you more about the actual mechanics of the game, like what about shooting, objectives, art, music, controls? Well, I have some explanation to do here, so shooting. I don't want this to be a grab a weapon and shoot kind of game. I actually want there to be only one type of gun. Actually, not even a gun. It's a bazooka or a grenade launcher. Whatever. I like puzzle games and will try to have some kind of puzzle element in this game. Grenade launchers are cool and all, but won't that just make it the kind of game that I didn't want? Well, no, because this grenade launcher will tie into the controls. The objective is not only going to be to shoot enemies, but also to shoot yourself? Wait, what? Hear me out. What if you could use the blast from the grenade to launch yourself to places you couldn't reach before? What if you could use the speed you got from the blast to slide, losing very little momentum, thus making it possible to go really fast? And what if the blast from the grenade could be used to move objects around, making it possible to solve puzzles and stuff? Well, that's the main idea for now. Art and music is still very difficult for me, as I still haven't figured out the style of the game. And it might have something to do with me being a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to artistic stuff, so I will never be satisfied with mediocre stuff, even if it's only a prototype. Where were we? Yes. The objective. I don't know. Coffee? Coffee. Yeah, sure. Coffee. I mean, yeah, coffee. Your objective is of course to brew the perfect cup of coffee. And how do you do that? You have to create the perfect blend, of course. To be a bit more serious, I do love coffee. I drink coffee every day, maybe a bit more coffee than my body likes me to drink. So I thought, hey, why not make the game about coffee? I threw some ideas around and landed in this. There will be a couple of different coffee beans that you can collect throughout the world. To get to these beans, you need to traverse a couple of puzzles, fight enemies, maybe encounter some bosses, and maybe even more. But why? Well, a normal brew won't cut it anymore. You have to have the strongest, most satisfying cup of coffee there is. The brew of gods. That's as far as I've gotten story-wise. But now, let's start actually developing the game. Finally. Does he ever stop talking? My first objective for this devlog is to implement shooting. After the last episode, we just had a basic way of moving around and jumping. I first made a square for the gun, which I will continue to call the gun even though I said it's not a gun. I made sure it was correctly attached to the player so that it would flip with the player. I then added a script to the gun which allowed it to always point towards the mouse position. And after adding that, I found out that the gun is pointing the wrong direction when you start going left. It took a while to figure out how to solve this, but I decided to add a part to the statement checking if the player is going left, and reverse the scale of the gun. Now it's finally time for some shooting. If the player clicks the left mouse button, a shoot method will be called, and this method simply spawns a bullet and adds some force to it. But I don't want the player to be able to spam bullets. That would be way too easy. So I added a counter for the amount of bullets the player has available. For now, the bullet is restored as soon as the bullet hits something, which is okay. But I want to have it so that the player can fire a bullet, then needs to reload before firing the next bullet. This is more true to how an actual grenade launcher works, and I think it will be more challenging and fun that way. The bullet has some weight to it, so it won't just go in a straight line, which adds to the challenge. I added trails to the bullet and the player to give a better response for how they move through the world. Now that shooting is implemented, I want the player to react to the blast. I really had a hard time figuring this out. The check to see if the player was in the blast radius didn't really work, but eventually I managed to Google myself to the answer and the check checks correctly. Now for the difficult part, the math. I want the player to gain speed according to the distance from the center of the blast. So first I had to calculate the direction of the force, which was simply by doing some vector math, which is always fun. Then I had to do more vector math, but this time to find the magnitude, which is much simpler, as Unity has a magnitude method already implemented. But that's where the difficult part started. First of all, I have made it so that the bullet takes care of seeing if the player is within the blast radius. And as it is a prefab, it don't really want to remember who the player is. Because of this, I reference the player by which tag it has and use the send message method to run a method in one of the scripts attached to the player. Confused yet? We're just getting started. The send message method can send a variable together with the name of the method it wants to run, which allows the method to use this variable as a parameter. The only problem is that I want two parameters, because I first of all want the vector 2 for the direction of the blast, as well as the magnitude from the blast to the player. This was a problem until I figured out that I could just bake it all into a vector 3 and unpack it to a vector 2 and float when the message was received. But then the real nightmare began. Actually adding the force to the player was tricky. You see, because of the way I used to have my movement set up, it always multiplied the move direction with the horizontal input, which is a very common solution to movement. But that means that even if the force is applied, it will immediately turn to 0, because the move input is 0. So I had to rework my movement handling, and after a while I got it working. Although the force from the blast was weird. But in the end, it all worked out, and here you can see me blasting over an object I can't jump over. Cool, but now what? I don't know how much time I will have in the coming weeks to work on the game, but I will try to put at least a couple of hours into it every week. And I also have my worst nightmare in front of me. Art. That's it for now, bye bye.